You did it. You decided what to eat, you found the ingredients, you cooked dinner, you actually ate it, and then you turn around. There's a frying pan on the stove, a chopping board on the bench, three utensils you somehow don't even remember using, and suddenly the kitchen feels completely impossible. So you walk away. But then you come back the next morning. The food has dried onto the pan. The mess is still there. And somehow it doesn't just feel like mess anymore. It feels like something you failed to do. But what if you didn't fail to finish cooking? What if cleaning up is actually an entirely different task? Today, I want to talk about why cleaning up after cooking can feel so difficult and why a messy kitchen isn't a moral failing. Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Bays. I'm a researcher in nutritional psychiatry, and I focus on how nutrition impacts mental health, particularly in autistic adults. We've talked before about why cooking itself can be difficult. There's planning, decision making, executive functioning, sensory demands, but there's another part of the cooking experience that I don't think we talk about enough. What happens afterwards? Because having enough capacity to cook something doesn't necessarily mean you have enough capacity left to clean everything afterwards. And I think recognizing that distinction can be incredibly helpful. Cooking and cleaning are two different tasks. We tend to bundle everything together: cook dinner, eat dinner, clean kitchen. One activity. But they're actually a whole series of tasks. Cooking might involve planning, sequencing, monitoring time, making decisions, and managing multiple things at once. At the same time, you might be dealing with heat, smells, noise, food textures, and visual clutter. So then you eat. And after all that, we expect our brain to seamlessly transition into, right, now let's clean everything. But your capacity doesn't work like an unlimited resource. Having enough energy and executive functioning to cook doesn't guarantee there's another reserve waiting for the dishes. So when you look at the kitchen afterwards and think, oh, I didn't finish, I'd like you to consider another possibility. Maybe you did. You finished feeding yourself. Cleaning is another task. There's another interesting thing that can happen here: the post-meal capacity crash. Before eating, you have a reason to keep going. You're hungry, you need food. Maybe you've already delayed eating longer than you intended. There's urgency, there's momentum. And sometimes that momentum carries you through cooking. Then you eat. The immediate need has been met. You sit down, your body starts to relax, and suddenly getting back up to tackle the kitchen feels much harder. The dishes haven't changed, but your capacity and motivational context have. And if cooking already took a lot out of you, there simply might not be much left. There's also something else happening. Cleaning introduces a second wave of sensory demands. Think about what you might have already tolerated while cooking: heat, cooking smells, the exhaust fan, sizzling, chopping, food on your hands, multiple things happening at once. Maybe you're already sensory saturated, and now cleaning brings greasy pans, wet food scraps, the dishwasher, strong detergent, clattering dishes, scraping dried food, and that slightly horrifying mystery water that somehow ends up inside the sink. Sometimes your nervous system just says, nope, we're done. And honestly, I can relate to this myself. I've definitely had times where I've managed to heat up some food, eat, look back at the kitchen sink, and thought, absolutely not. That's all the capacity I had for that task on that day. And I've had to learn that successfully feeding myself doesn't somehow become a moral failure because I didn't also leave behind a spotless kitchen immediately afterwards. Sometimes cooking or heating up food was the priority. Cleaning can wait. And this brings me to one of the most common pieces of kitchen advice that you might hear. Just clean as you go. Now, for some people, that's brilliant advice. If it works for you, absolutely use it. But clean as you go isn't a rule, it's a strategy. Because for someone who finds task switching difficult, cleaning as you go might actually make cooking harder. Cook, stop, wash, go back, wipe, go back, put something away. Wait, what was I doing? Constantly switching between cooking and cleaning can add cognitive load to an activity that's already demanding. So if clean as you go helps you, great. If it doesn't, you don't need to force yourself into a system that isn't working for your brain. Instead, I really like the idea of what I'm calling the minimum viable reset. Rather than asking, how do I clean this entire kitchen? Ask, what's the smallest thing I can do now that will make tomorrow easier? And importantly, not everything in the kitchen has the same urgency. Maybe tonight, put the leftovers safely in the fridge, deal with the food scraps, put some water in the frying pan so nothing dries onto it, and clear one little section of bench so you have somewhere to make breakfast tomorrow. That's enough. The saucepan on the drying rack, tomorrow. The mug on the bench, it can wait. Maybe your minimum viable reset takes 5 minutes. Maybe it takes two. Maybe on a really difficult day, it's simply food away, pan soaking, done. A reset doesn't have to mean returning the kitchen to perfect. Sometimes it simply means reducing friction for future you. And maybe the accommodation is another person. Perhaps one person cooks and somebody else handles the dishes. That's not failure. That's dividing tasks according to capacity. And I think there's something quite powerful about deliberately deciding, I'm not doing the rest tonight. That's very different from spending the whole evening thinking, I should clean that. I'll do it in a minute. Why haven't I done it yet? I really need to get up. Instead, the food is away, the pan is soaking, I've done enough. The rest is for tomorrow. You're not pretending the mess doesn't exist. You're giving yourself permission to pause. And if you do walk into the kitchen tomorrow morning and see last night's dishes, before you think, why didn't I do it? Try to remember the mess isn't evidence about your character. Maybe yesterday took more capacity than you had. Maybe cleaning has sensory barriers you hadn't recognized. Maybe your system had too many steps. Maybe you needed rest. The mess can give us useful information. It doesn't have to tell us, I'm lazy, I'm bad at being an adult, or I failed. A crusty frying pan is just a crusty frying pan. It's not a personality test. And ultimately, I think it's worth remembering what our kitchens are actually for. They're not showrooms, they're places where we feed ourselves. So maybe success today isn't, I cooked a meal, cleaned everything, wiped every surface, and left the kitchen spotless. Maybe success is simply, I fed myself. And maybe the goal doesn't have to be a perfectly clean kitchen. Maybe the goal is a kitchen that supports you in feeding yourself again tomorrow. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's one thing that makes post-cooking cleanup easier for you? Maybe you have your own version of a minimum viable reset. Maybe somebody else does the dishes. Or perhaps your frying pan is currently soaking too. I'd love to hear what works for you. You might also find my previous videos helpful as well, so check those out. And if you're interested in more evidence-based, neuro-affirming approaches to nutrition and mental well-being, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.